Okay. All right. Okay, so welcome. We are very fortunate today to be able to talk with Jeannine Bailey, and I want to give you a quick bio about Jeannine so that you kind of understand where we're coming from. Jeannine had a 20-year career in radio, including working for iHeartRadio and locally in Birmingham for Magic 96.5 radio station, then made a huge career transition when she moved into the role of communications supervisor and then communications director, and then communications and organizational effectiveness director, and then human resources director for Southern Nuclear Company. And for those of you that don't know, they run nuclear power plants. Along the way, she got an MBA and completed a nuclear reactor technology course for executives at MIT, as one does, you know.
As one does, yeah.
And she has most recently been tapped to take on the role of talent and employee engagement manager at Alabama Power Company and Southern Company operations. So needless to say, she's made some major zigzags in her career, and that's why we wanted to talk to her and have her share her experiences. We know that she'll help light the way for those of us who may be facing the need or the desire to revamp our careers in light of what's happening with the COVID-19 situation, and hopefully give us some inspiration. So thank you for being with us, Jeannine.
Yeah, happy to be here.
Yeah, and happy birthday to you.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I'm apologizing in advance if any flower deliveries or edible arrangements show up. I might have to.
I hope they do.
So one thing we want to say here right at the beginning is that we're interviewing Jeannine today as an individual. She does work for Alabama Power now, but she is not speaking on behalf of the company. She's here to tell us about her personal experiences. So I want to dive right in, Jeannine. Give us sort of a high-level overview of the path you followed from the position you held in radio to your career pivot and where you are now.
So how much time do you have? It's
give us the very abbreviated.
I'll give you the very abbreviated version. So as you mentioned, I had almost 2 decades in radio and worked all over the country, Colorado, Connecticut, Pennsylvania, Maryland, and then Alabama. And at each of those jobs, I learned a different part of the business. I was not just on the air, but I was also managing things like the marketing and promotions, or the on-air talent, having to learn how to deliver contests, or select the music we played, or do market research. And so each of those opportunities that I had along the way, I got progressive responsibility, and I also kind of expanded my toolkit. And so when it was time for me to start thinking about a career pivot, which I decided to do because the industry changed a lot, and it got to a point where opportunities were fewer and fewer. And I had gotten to a point where I wanted some stability. I had a life change as well, became a mom. And so it was important for me to have some more stability, and I wanted to put down roots someplace instead of having to move. So I looked back over my career and thought of all the different skills I had that were transferable. And so things like project management, personnel management, doing market research, coming up with communications plans. Like I started to look at, I wasn't just somebody that went on the air and talked about celebrity gossip or delivered the news, which is a important skill to have, but I also did a ton of other stuff. And so using those skills kind of as a building place, I started to look for the kinds of jobs that I could do in kind of the real world. And so I looked for jobs that would need somebody that was good at leading a team, or good at project planning, or good at creating communications campaigns. And when it came time to look for that kind of job, corporate communications seemed like a natural fit.
So
how did you, go ahead, Jules.
I have kind of a 2-part question. One is, were you able to step back and look at your toolkit or your skill sets and say, okay, I can do this and this and this? Or did you have somebody kind of talk you through that and go, like, Jeannine, look at all these things that you do, and help you identify those?
Both, because I had actually left radio one time before coming to work for my current company. I, for a while, had decided I was going to pursue doing nonprofit work, like event planning and communications consulting for nonprofits. And at that time, I had somebody that was helping me with that. But fast forward, 7 years later, I decided I would use that same process myself. And so when I was looking for different kinds of jobs that I thought I'd be good at, just from a gut feeling, I started looking at what the job posting said and started to see like, okay, can I do that? Because I know a lot of women, you've probably seen the statistic like anybody else, women only apply for jobs that they think they're 100% qualified for. And so I started looking to see, could I make it work? Could I look at that job posting and make what I do now translate into that language? And so that was kind of my self-guided process when I made this transition, trying to see, what do I do? What do I have in my toolkit that could be used in a new environment?
That's great. So how did you go about finding those opportunities and starting to develop relationships that would lead to job offers?
So Twitter was one of the places I started. LinkedIn was another place I started. I also started just looking like through my personal contacts and seeing like, okay, who do I know that works at whatever company that I was interested in working in? I didn't want to jump from one unstable industry into another. And so it was really important for me to, as I was doing my kind of targeted job search, to look for a company that I really wanted to work for. And so
you're looking for company, not necessarily just position.
That's right. And so for me, it was really helpful to get really clear about this is the kind of company I want to work for. I wanted somebody wanted somebody that was like filling out a dating profile. I wanted a company that had enough bandwidth that I could do a bunch of things in one company. My dad worked for UPS for 33 years and had a different job every 2 years. And I always thought that was so interesting that he was able to do that and navigate that within the same company. And I wanted something like that. I was kind of tired of moving all over the country. And so I was interested in expanding my opportunities, but finding a home where I could do that. And so in the Birmingham area, which is where I'm located, there were some specific companies that I was interested in doing that. So when I started to think about how could I get kind of a foot in the door with those companies, I started looking at social media and my personal network to see who I knew that worked there.
And when you found someone that worked there, what did you do? I think sometimes people get stuck in that place of like searching online and aren't really sure what to do once they find those names.
So it's super helpful if you actually do know them, and I'm a big advocate of just kind of calling the baby ugly and saying, here's the deal. I'm looking for in at the company and I'm trying to make a big transition. I think I would be a great asset to you guys. Here's the things I bring to the table. Who do you know that I can talk to there? It's so intimidating to do that. But I was met with such support when I did that. It was incredible. I think people like having an opportunity to help if you approach it in a genuine way, if you're not kind of I don't know what the right word is, but if you're not fake about it, if you're not like, trying to oversell, if you're just genuinely approaching them as your authentic self. And then the people that I didn't know personally, I asked them if I could have a few minutes of their time. And I just said, look, I know I don't know you, but I saw that you work at the company that I'm interested in working in, and I would love to talk to you about why you love working there. And giving them an opportunity to kind of tell me more about the company helped me to know if that really was somebody I wanted to keep on my list.
I think that's such great advice, because so many people that I talk to, or that Lisa and I talk to, will say like, why would this person want to talk to me? They don't even know. And sometimes that's true. They don't want to talk to you, but I think probably 98% of the time, somebody will give you 15 minutes, 30 minutes of their time.
Yeah. I mean, and it's, obviously it's, dependent on if the person has time. And one of my kind of pro tips that I tell a lot of people is like, don't start with a VP. Like, you don't go approach the person that has the busiest schedule. Like find somebody like you. Like, if you're trying to make a transition as a VP, I guess you could use that as a transition person. But for me, I wasn't trying to go find time with the CEO of the company. I was looking for people that were kind of doing the work at the level I wanted to do it at. And then asking, how did you get to do that? And how do you suggest I try to do that?
So one of the questions I have is, kind of as you made this career change and transition, you did some education. I know that you're very oriented toward like learning and knowing more.
You can say it. I'm a nerd. It's okay.
You're one of us. You're one of us.
You're a positive nerd, Jeannine.
Right.
I love it. I love being a nerd.
So like looking back, like what actions or decisions or training or experiences would you say that you took in that sort of had the most positive impact on your making this career transition?
So for me, getting a job at a big company made me realize how much I did not know about business, like reading financial statements, how economics played into the success of the company, that kind of thing. And so I knew for me, it was really important to learn more about that. And so I did a lot of that informally, talking to the people in that kind of area of the company, but I knew it was important for me to go get that credential for two reasons. Number one, for my own kind of edification, because I am a nerd, I love to learn, but also because I wanted to be able to kind of hold my own and have some street cred. And so, having that master's degree in business administration made me feel like I could have a seat at the table. And if I had an opinion, I felt like I was, more allowed to give it. So that was one thing. I've also pursued other certificates and degrees. One of them was in nuclear technology, which is insane for somebody like me who hated physics and math and science to have pursued. But it was a developmental opportunity that was presented to me, and I knew I had to take it. I was working with some of the smartest people I had ever met in my life. And there's some very real reasons that they make decisions the way they do, and taking a course about the technology that I was communicating about made a real difference in my ability to be able to do that. And so being a student of the business, whether it's the financial side of the business or the actual technology that I was working with, was really, really important. And then when go ahead, sorry.
About the intimidation factor there. I mean, to come from like your background in a completely and to go take a course on nuclear, what was it? Nuclear
technology, yeah.
Technology at MIT.
We can't even say the word.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, how did you sort of overcome that intimidation factor and that, like, I'm not sure I belong here kind of feeling?
So to be clear, I didn't belong there. I was very much the lowest woman on the totem pole there. The full name of the course is the Nuclear Reactor Technology Course for Executives. And I was not an executive, but my boss at the time was the CEO of the company, and he nominated me to go. So I got to go. And my philosophy was, if he thinks I'm willing or I'm capable of being there, like, I'm going to go. And I mean, it's not like they can really flunk me, they're not going to take away my license to run the reactor. So the only thing I can do is learn. And I had talked to other people that were alumni of the program, and they spoke very highly of the experience, having helped them understand the business better, but also from the people that ran the program that helped them succeed in it. And so when I went, I knew that I was going to be set up for success. And so that was really important.
That's great. Well, one of the things that Julie and I are focusing on this month is the idea of leadership flexibility or adaptability. And I'd love to hear you talk specifically about the ways in which you had to be flexible and adaptable in order to make this pivot in your career.
Yeah, so there was a lot of that. And so having to come in and kind of learn how things had been done and learn where I could challenge and where I couldn't and that kind of thing, like that was kind of step one. My very first team meeting with the people that were going to work for me, I remember one of the women like crossed her arms and was like, so let me be clear, you've never worked for a utility before? And, so I had to win over the team, and I had to be really flexible to do that. Like I had to be willing to sit in front of them and say, like, I don't know, like, will you teach me? And then also to explain, like, I do know this part. And so I will help lead you here if you will lead me here. Like, this is going to be a partnership and we'll do it together. But I also had to be willing to step out and challenge some stuff. Just because it had always been that way didn't mean it had to be. And to recognize, like, when there was a better way or an easier way, that was really important. And coming from an environment where, I got to wear jeans every day and, worked in radio, so I didn't really have to like put on real clothes or makeup or anything. It was really important for me to learn kind of how the business was done. Oh my God, I made a joke about edible arrangements and one totally just got here.
should go get it.
That's amazing.
Go get it. Go get it.
I'll get it later. That's so great. Sorry about that.
Add a little excitement to the interview.
Sorry. But yeah, so it was important to be flexible in recognizing where I had expertise to bring and where I didn't. And where I needed to leverage the expertise of the team and where I could step up and be the leader. One of the things that happens after you've been in a career for a really long time is you feel like, okay, I got this and I can do every job here because I've done every job here kind of thing. And coming in and being the new kid is a little intimidating. And so having to learn how to play that card and have some humility and go to them and say, I don't understand this. Help me explain this to me. I had people that I worked with that literally like turned over pieces of paper and would draw things for me so I could understand like what part of the plant we were talking about or those kind of things. Or people that like sent me books to read so that I would understand the history of the industry or that kind of thing. Like remaining a student or being open to being a student was really, really important.
That's great. I love that because really what you're describing is a willingness to be vulnerable and to put yourself out there into situations where you weren't comfortable, you didn't know what the outcome was going to be, and you were emotionally exposed, and taking the risk despite those things. So kudos to you.
Yeah,
thanks.
And having that growth mindset of saying, I don't know much now, but I know I can get better, and I need to surround myself with people who will teach me and who are committed to me being successful in this role. That's huge. Okay, so as you know, this coronavirus pandemic is potentially forcing a lot of people to really take a hard look at their career, at their situation, and maybe having to make some major pivots. What advice would you give to people out there who are looking at making a career change or a career change?
I mean, the biggest advice is to figure out what you want to do. For me, it was really a industry crisis. It wasn't obviously a global pandemic, but the business was forcing a lot of people out. And so I knew it was only a matter of time before I lost my job. And so I was lucky enough to have a little bit of time to start looking and taking my time to figure it out. And so I do consider that a blessing. But the biggest part of the process was figuring out what did I want to do, and being open to kind of faint signals that were kind of guiding me in the right direction. When I would read a job posting and go, ooh, that sounds interesting. I'd be like, now what about that had interest to me? Like, why was I excited about that? Like, let me do a little research here. Let me think about what part of that would be most fun. And then could I find a job where I could put all of it together and go do that?
So it sounds like it was kind of a combination of, casting a pretty wide net and then sort of paying attention to your internal reaction. To what you said, to what you were finding out from what you were asking people. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And the other part of it, and, I hope everybody has as many good friends as I do, because I'm very blessed that way. I ask my friends, what do you think I would be good at? And like then sat back and listened. It's super hard to hear people say nice things about you, or at least it is for me. And so that was very awkward. But it was good intel because it told me kind of how I showed up externally, and it gave me some insight that I didn't even realize I had. Like when they would talk to me about the different skills that they saw me having, I was like, you know what, I am good at that. Or, I hadn't really thought about that. And so that was helpful to have kind of my board of advisors, my best girlfriends, I call them my tribe, give me some insight into what they thought would be good. Not because I was looking for consensus, but because I was looking for information that I was blind to. And it was really helpful to have them give me that.
Well, Jeannine, I can tell you that one of the things you're good at is interviewing about your career pivot, because
thank you.
I think what you've shared is going to be very helpful to people from a broad sense of like how to approach the process, but you were also really good at giving words that people could use when they call someone and ask them for advice. So thank you for taking us both big picture and also granularly. We know how busy you are right now because you are homeschooling as well as doing your full-time job. So we
brand new full-time job. Yeah. Yeah. And the other thing I want to add to what Lisa said is, I think, you did such a beautiful job of normalizing this awkward, uncomfortable, vulnerable process putting ourselves out there and trying something new, and that it's just, that's just the way it is for everybody. There's no escaping it. And
Yes, if it feels
Yeah.
like it sucks to you, that means you're normal.
That's right. That's right. I mean, I literally, there were a couple times where I would either write people emails or call them and say, can I take you out for a really awkward coffee? You know, and like, I mean, it's just, I think people appreciate if you acknowledge that this is weird, but like we're all doing it.
Yeah.
And I also think that if you give people kind of the, kind of insight that this is weird and I'm trying here, like they're going to meet you halfway.
Yeah. Excellent advice.
Okay.
Thank you, Jean.
Thank
Have
you.
a good rest of your birthday.
Yes.
Thank you so much. I'm going to go check on my edible arrangement.
Good. Awesome. Okay. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, guys.